All right, here we go. Chapter 9, Testing a Claim. We're going to look at section 9.3 and tests about a population mean. In other words, our parameter is going to be mu. So in this section, we should be able to state and check for randomness. That is, again, our SRS. The 10% condition, which is for independence, which is our 10 times our sample size has to be less than or equal to our population. And then we're going to check to see for normality. And now with means, we're going to be hoping that our sample size is bigger, at least 30, because then we could use the CLT. If it is not bigger than 30, well, then you're going to have to graph it. Graph your data and see if that graph does look relatively normal. So as we stack the dots, does it look relatively normal when we go ahead and plot that data? So we're going to have to remember the difference also between when we use sigma versus S of x. Well, we're going to perform a significance test about a population mean, so we're going to be looking at p-values. Use a confidence interval, so we're going to review a little bit of that from chapter 8. That's where we looked at confidence intervals. And then perform a significance test about a mean difference. So we'll be looking at the mean of one population minus the mean of another population. So we'll have to remember our rules for adding and subtracting means and adding and subtracting standard deviations. All right, so confidence intervals, which was chapter 8, and significance tests is what we're doing right now here in chapter 9. For population proportion P are based on Z values. Again, when we were doing in section 9.2, we were doing population proportion P values. We use the Z-chart from the standard normal distribution. Inference about a population mean, mu, we'll use a t-distribution. So we got to remember in the t-distribution we always have that n-1 degrees of freedom. Because that's the way the table B chart is organized. And again, we wouldn't have to use t-distribution if we knew what the population standard deviation was, but that is rarely known. So back in again chapter 8, we learned how to construct confidence intervals for a population mean. Now we're going to examine the details of testing a claim. We're going to be looking at hypothesis testing, so the null and the alternative hypotheses about a population parameter mu. So here we go. In an earlier example, a company claimed, so we got a company claiming to have developed a new AAA battery that lasts longer than its regular AAA batteries. Based on years of experience, the company knows that its regular AAA batteries last for 30 hours of continuous use on average. So that to me is looking like 30 hours. That's their claim. They're saying that mu is 30. Well, we go out and we take an SRS of 15 new batteries, So there's my sample size of 15. And it lasts an average of 33.9 hours. So an average of 33.9, again, that's a sample average. So that's an X bar is 33.9 with a standard deviation. So again, this is from our population, or from our sample, sorry. This is a sample standard deviation of 9.8. The question is, do these data give convincing evidence that the new batteries last longer on average? So based off my sample data, are they really lasting longer? Well, what we would do is we would perform that significance test in our first box of the 4-step process. This is where we're going to put in this stuff. We're going to put in our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis. We'd also identify the population of interest and the parameter of interest, and also identify what our alpha level is at this point. But we're not going to do this problem right now. So In Chapter 8, we also introduced those conditions, the 3 conditions that go in that second box that go into here. That's our sin box. And again, that's for randomness. The 10% condition, in other words, checking for 10 times your sample size is less than or equal to your population. And then again, looking for normality. And again, we would love for the population or for our sample to be greater than or equal to 30, because the central limit theorem would state then that we have a normal distribution. But if the population distribution it has an unknown shape, because if the population distribution was normal, then we know our sample is normal. But if it's unknown and has a sample size less than 30, we're going to have to graph the sample data and then assess normality of the population. Does it look relatively normal? In other words, no outliers or heavy skewness. We would then, in the third box of our significance test procedure, in this area right here, we would do the mathematics and find our test statistic. Okay. The nice thing here is the standard deviation of our statistic. This is the standard deviation of that population, because we would have that population. This is the standard of the sampling distribution, the standard deviation, if we knew the population standard deviation, but many times we don't know that. So what we do is we substitute S sub x, the sample standard deviation, in for that. And when we do that, that's when we're going to have to use a t-distribution, because we don't know what that population standard deviation is. So in calculating that test statistic, we'll be using a t-distribution. And again, our statistic was that x bar minus our parameter, where our mean of our hypothesized distribution, divided by our standard deviation of the statistic. That's all here on the bottom. So again, remember a t-distribution, we have that n minus 1 degrees of freedom when we look up on table B. So we carry out that information in that third box of our 4-step process. Again, our data we want to test the claim that the mean was 30. We believe it's actually higher than 30. So we get 15 batteries, come with a sample mean of 33.9 and a sample standard deviation 9.8. We can put the numbers into our formula, and we get a t of 1.54. So what does that mean? How do we assess that or evaluate that? Well, in a standard t-distribution, our mean is 0. And if our t was at 1.54, we're going to have to look at, well, what is that area here to the right? Because we're looking at greater than. We were looking at the alternative was greater than, so that's a right-tailed test. So we need to find the area that's in this little shaded region here. So we go to the t-chart, and we're going to go to 14 on the degrees of freedom. And since the t-statistic falls between the values of 1.345 and 1.761, in other words, this 1.54 value, that's falling right in between here. It's in between these two numbers. So, because it's falling in between here, we look up here, and it's falling between those two values for our probability. So it's somewhere between 5% and 10%. And that's where our p-value is. We don't have the exact value by reading the chart. We'll have to talk later about using the calculator for this. So again, use table B wisely. It does give a range of possible p-values. We can still draw a conclusion from the test much the same way as if we had a single probability, by comparing the range of those values to our desired significance level. So again, we look at that p-value, and again, if our p-values are less than our significance level, we would reject the null. If our p-values were greater than our significance level, we'd fail to reject the null. So again, that's fail to reject. And up here, this would be reject. All right. So table B includes probabilities only for t distributions with degrees of freedom from 1 to 30, and then it skips, goes to 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, and 1,000. We got to remember how to handle that, and if it's not provided, again, remember round down and use the next lower degree of freedom that is available. So like if I had degrees of freedom of 44, I would use 40. Again, so table B only shows probabilities for positive values of t, but the t distribution is symmetric, so you would just make the negative value a positive value. All right, so when the conditions are met, we can test a claim about a population mean using a one-sample t-test. And if we have a SRS of a certain size from the population that contains an unknown mu, we can test that hypothesis that the mu is some stated value and compute that statistic as we did in the previous page. Okay. And again, an alternative hypothesis with greater than would be a right-sided test, or a one-sided test to the right. A less than would be a one-sided test to the left, and not equal is a two-sided. It's just different. So a two-sided test, so again, if our null hypothesis had some form of unequal, we're looking at it, is there a difference? The connection between two-sided tests and confidence intervals is even stronger for means than it was for proportions. That's because both inference methods for means use the standard error. They both have the same standard error in their formula. Right, they're both the same ones for our test statistic, and then it's used in our confidence interval as well. So if we say we have a two-sided test at a significance level of, say, 0.05, well, that means we have a confidence interval of 95%. So an alpha of 0.05 gives us a confidence interval of 95%. When the two-sided significance test at a level alpha that rejects the null, that confidence level interval from mu will not contain the hypothesized value. Okay, so if I reject the null in a significance test, that means that value will not be in the confidence interval. When the two-sided significance test at a level fails to reject, so if I fail to reject the null, okay, then the confidence interval that we calculated will contain the mu. Well, that's it for now. We'll have you go back and attempt some of the problems in the homework. And what I see as the homework here is 59 through 62. 65, 69, 73, 77, and 79. I wish you good skill, and we'll see you on day 2 of 9.3.